what has philanthropy actually solved? And it's not a lot. Like, think about them. We've put hundreds of millions of dollars into cancer research and solving hunger and disaster relief or climate change, and we don't have real solutions. Private philanthropy works in a couple areas. Vaccines, coronavirus is actually a good example, but malaria, smallpox, like crazy innovative research where private philanthropists can take crazy risk, prove concept, and then let the governments or big and nonprofit organizations who are allowed to take risk see it as a safer bet, and then pour resources into it. But hunger, homelessness, cancer, like those are not places where private philanthropy has really done well.
Why can't private philanthropy solve hunger? Like, one of the posts I saw was saying how, I'm going to tell my kids this is why 1 in 3 children are hungry right now. Because you have Bezos, instead of paying income taxes, is, flying his penis rocket to space. Like, why is that wrong?
Welcome back to Yang Speaks, everybody. This is your weekly Thursday update where it's Yang Speaks, Yang and Friends Speak. You've got Zach Grauman.
Just Friends Speak.
Just Friends Speak?
Well, Yang doesn't speak today. Yang's Friends Speak.
Yang's Friends Speak on your Thursday update. You're all used to it by now. Carly Riley, the one and only.
You're all used to it, but that won't stop 6 of you from being like, where's Yang?
That's fair. And hopefully that's because we're growing and people are finding out about the pod. And where this is our week on Thursdays, Mondays Andrew does an interview and gives his take on the world, and on Thursdays Carly and I look to break down a topic that's being misunderstood in the media. Last week we did socialism.
Well, I wanted to say, first of all, thank you. We got a ton of engagement on the episode. Some people loved it. Some people thought we weren't generous enough to socialism. I've read your comments. I've checked out the socialist thinkers you recommended to me. I have to say, I stand by our episode, but I have learned more since then, so I really appreciate it. In particular, Dr. Richard Wolff is somebody you all said to watch, so if anybody out there is interested in learning more, you can check out Richard Wolff. He makes a really interesting argument about state capitalism and says that Cuba is actually a state capitalist society. So again, it's everybody trying to redefine what socialism is, but I thought it was interesting. So much appreciated all of you who gave recommendations.
At Carly P. Riley on Instagram, she'll post a response of some sort on this bad boy.
Oh, will I? Okay, apparently I'm now locked into posting a response.
You've been playing around all week. Just do it, girl.
Okay, at Carly P. Riley, Twitter and Instagram. And thank you I got some good DMs too, so appreciate the DMs always. I'm sometimes slow to respond, but I try to get around to it.
So this week, this is something I'm very, very passionate about. I don't know if Carly's as passionate about it, but don't care. I mean, I care. I care about you. But I think the world has missed this one. We're talking about billionaires in space. And so for those of you, I'm assuming most of you have heard this because this was national news pretty much everywhere. Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, and as well as Richard Branson, the guy who started Virgin Records and is Virgin everything now. They both spent billions of dollars to go to space, and the media does not know what to do with this. So I'm very excited because there's kind of two narratives, and I'm curious, Carly, to make sure I get this right, because most of my life is just asking you if I'm doing it right. Is on one side, the press freaks out, like, oh my gosh, such a great story, like billionaires in space, this is awesome. We love covering super rich people, and we love covering people go to space. But on the other hand, particularly from the left, there's a narrative that this is a complete waste of money and capitalism gone wrong and they should be using the money to save the world. Now, so, did I get that right, Carly? That's the narrative I'm seeing.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So, I want to be very clear. This is not and will not ever be a Defend the Billionaires podcast. There are plenty of reasons not to like billionaires and Jeff Bezos. Whether it's not paying workers enough or...
I will say, I kind of hate the, we're going to hate billionaires, narrative. I think that's stupid. Billionaires are all different individuals. Forget J.K. Rowling's recent scandal. She's somebody who became a billionaire just by writing amazing books. People have become billionaires by doing...
very wholesome things and very terrible things, right? But I want to... and we want to make sure, I think it's helpful to understand this narrative, and particularly for myself personally, I've worked in philanthropy before at the highest levels with these types of people, and I know what's not being covered, at least from that side of things. So I want to dive in, and then at the end, the back half of this, we're going to make a crypto call, which I think y'all should be excited about.
It's not a crypto call. This is classic Zach.
It's not a crypto
it's
call?
It's an NFT.
What's it called?
It's an NFT. It's a non-fungible token, which...
That's not a type of crypto? How many fucking crypto podcast interviews do I have to do and listen to get the damn terminology right? I
mean, it's in the crypto world.
I give up. It's still cool, though, and y'all are going to like it. All right. Billionaires in space. I guess I'll dive in and we'll get your take, Carl. So I like starting with some facts, and Carl, hop in. So basically, Jeff Bezos is worth $209 billion, which is ridiculous. His company, Blue Origin, is looking basically to find a profitable model to explore space, whether it's space tourism or other types of recyclable rockets, things like that. He's been auctioning off space trips, and some have been going for upwards of $100 million. Ridiculous. He's had 15 successful flights, and he just went up about a week and a half ago. And his quote is, we're going to build...
He spent like $5.5 billion for like a 10-minute 10 minutes in space flight. Or a 10-minute flight, whatever it was.
His quote was, we're going to build a road to space so our kids and their kids can build the future. And he did have some kind of douchey moments. He was like, he thanked all the Amazon employees. And I was like, dude.
Well, he thanked all of us who are Amazon customers.
I guess it's better than not thanking them, but it's...
I don't know. The question for me is like, was he doing that intentionally to rile the internet, or did he not realize that he was, like, is he actually that out of touch? So if anybody missed this, Jeff Bezos said, I want to thank the Amazon employees and like Amazon customers because you guys paid for this. Right. And like, you know, the left had a field day with that, understandably. And I don't know if he just doesn't realize or if he was like intentionally
Who
trying.
knows? Jeff Bezos being Jeff Bezos. And for context, so Richard Branson has his company Virgin Galactic. He's trying to do space tourism, which is, I think he has 600 people signed up for reservations that cost $250,000 each. And then Elon Musk wasn't in the news per se for this, but he has SpaceX and he's kind of included in this billionaires going to space. For the record, there are other billionaires working on this as well, but these are your big name players. And it's a cool story because you got billionaires, they're doing awesome stuff, they're competing, it's the billionaire space race, and then this whole narrative from the left, like, is it evil? And that's what we wanted to talk about today.
I'm excited about this. Your perspective on this is interesting. I don't know if people fully understand your background, and maybe we dive into it a little bit more in just a second, because I think it's worth understanding what you did do in your past life as both a founder of a nonprofit that's going to be worth $1 million this year, and as somebody who worked with the biggest charitable givers in the world. But I think first, like you kind of outlined this, the media narratives we're seeing are not just about like what's in the media, right? I think we have some headlines here of like what all that money that's being spent on space exploration could help to solve, right? That seemed to be a big narrative. Oh, Jeff Bezos spent $5.5 billion to be in space for 4 minutes. You know, here are the 7 things that money would have been better spent on. How the billionaire space race could be one giant leap for pollution. You're getting a lot of that. But
MSNBC was my favorite, was Jeff Bezos' live Blue Origin space launch is the pinnacle of waste. Fun.
Well, but you also have what I thought was interesting, because I wasn't tracking a lot of those media headlines, was the social media like outrage over this. The memes were everywhere, I think, right? Like you have, you know, there was one of that with the quote, "Men will literally launch themselves into space instead of going to therapy." You know, and then you had like Jamila Jamil, who I tend to really like.
Bezos just got divorced, yes.
Yeah. Jamila Jamil was like, oh, wait, like, so which billionaire got to be in space first? Like, oh, wait, I don't care, fuck these guys. You know, sure, flying to space is cool, but have you ever tried paying income tax? Like, that was generally kind of, you know, big social media names, that was the sentiment. And then the other one that I thought was interesting was the comparisons that I saw all over the place of how much time the media dedicated to talking about Bezos in space as opposed to how much time they spent talking about other things. So for example, on the Sunday or whenever it was that Bezos went into space, like America, CBS This Morning, like all these news shows collectively spent more time talking about Bezos in space than they had spent talking about climate change in all of 2020. So that's getting people mad, like, they're making climate change worse. Meanwhile, the media won't even cover climate change. So I think that's sort of the background.
So there was one article, it was probably my favorite, Global Citizen listed off things he could have used the money for instead. So if you had $5.5 billion, what else could you spend it on? And they said, don't quote me on this, is Global Citizen, whether their numbers are accurate or not. They seem ballpark enough. But they said he could have saved 37.5 million people from starving. He could have vaccinated the world, which I think is BS because vaccinations are actually not a cost problem. They're a distribution problem. But that would be $2.6 billion to vaccinate the world just from a cost perspective on medicine. And then humanitarian interventions are believed to, if you spent $1 billion in Nigeria or $2 billion in the Congo or $1.5 billion or so in Afghanistan, you'd be able to solve a lot of those crises. Again, a bit of a stretch, but this is what people are saying. He should have spent the money on other things. So I think this is important to help us understand. Is this wrong? Is this right? What should average humans actually think about this? Should we be pissed that billionaires are spending a bunch of money in space? Maybe a lot of us don't care, but it's forced in our faces anyway. So I think having an opinion on it should be helpful, an informed opinion. Maybe I'll start, Carl. I guess unless you want to take this a different direction. I'm thinking. Here's where we're at. I used to basically help very, very like $100 million plus. Philanthropists and rich people give money to charity. And I used to help other people do that as well on our team when I was on Wall Street. And so here's a general perspective.
You ran
What's up?
You ran like client philanthropy services at UBS.
I was head of client philanthropy solutions at UBS, which was a fancy title to go around and help people with their giving. But a number of thoughts. Let's dive in here quickly. Just to set the record straight, Jeff Bezos and his philanthropy, he's been hammered in the press for not doing a lot of things maybe your traditional billionaires are doing, traditional public billionaires. But he is objectively the top two philanthropists in the entire world last year were himself and his wife, who took half of his net worth in a divorce. He created a $10 billion Bezos Earth Fund to fight climate change. He's donated $100 million to Feed America. In 2018, he gave $1 billion to fund education homelessness. He's given millions before that. So he is, whether we want to call him greedy or not, he's the biggest philanthropist in the world, at least right now. Now, he's not Bill Gates. I mean, it's different. How they tally this up is when you give it, So if you start a family foundation with $10 billion, you're not giving that all at once. So the Gates Foundation has given more on a yearly basis. But in terms of pure philanthropy.
Has he pledged to give all his money away? Is he one of those billionaires?
So there's something called the Giving Pledge that I believe Bill Gates started, which is the wealthiest people in the world, billionaires, pledge to give.
Buffett started it with Gates.
I thought he signed it.
No, but I'm pretty sure because Buffett pledged to give all his money to the Gates Foundation, and that's what kicked it off. I'm a big Buffett head, so not as in Jimmy.
That's not less important, but the point is that billionaires all over the world are signing this pledge to give away half of their wealth, is what it is. They give away half. Jeff Bezos is one of the few who has not signed it.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's Bill and Warren together. That's what you're like. He's not a particularly generous dude, Bezos. Like you're like, oh, he gave a ton of money, but like it reminds me of what's that? The Bible story of like the woman who gave 1 cent, but it was like all she had versus the man who gave $100 million. That's not what the number was in the Bible. Sure. And he had 10 billion. Like I don't think what he's doing, I don't think he's a generous dude at all. And I think I
would argue debatable because
not to me.
There's plenty of billionaires that we do not know about that don't give anything.
So they're really ungenerous, but that shouldn't,
Agreed.
The bar isn't.
But here's the other piece is Warren Buffett, like had not done anything major philanthropically until he decided to give it all away at the end of his life. So you're talking about 60 years plus where he was not a philanthropist.
No, Buffett, and Buffett has spoken about this, right? And he A, regrets it, but B, Buffett doesn't care about money, but he's a competitive dude. And so he was like, I wasn't giving my money away because watching myself get richer was how I measured that I was succeeding at the thing that I love.
Sure, but why can't Bezos have the same justification?
Because he hasn't verbally said any of that.
Why does he have to verbally say that?
Why wouldn't he just make the giving pledge if he was planning on giving it away? You're now in.
Who cares? He can make the giving pledge at any point in his life.
You're assuming that he's going to. I'm just going off of the information I have, and you're seeming to like project that maybe someday he'll make this pledge and therefore we should think he's generous.
I'm not saying that. He could not sign the pledge and give half his wealth away. Like pledge is just a symbolic thing that he maybe.
Okay, but he's not giving half his wealth away. I'm based on what we know thus far, and what we know thus far is he's given away a paltry sum compared to what he has, and he's given no indication that he's going to give away more. Whereas Buffett, yes, didn't give away for a while, but has explained why and has said he's giving all of his money away, not even just half of it.
He's probably half the age of Buffett. 1, 2. Saying that there's no indication that he's given, that he's made no indication that he's going to give more away. He gave $10 billion away last year. He's the largest.
Out of $209 billion. That's
sure, but a lot of that's illiquid. So it's not like, I mean, I understand that he could give more. I'm not trying to defend this guy, but to say that he's not a philanthropist is ridiculous. Okay. And to say that he's not relatively generous is ridiculous.
Oh, I think that's what's not ridiculous at all. I think to say he's not relatively generous is exactly what you can say.
How many people give 5% of their net worth away every year? Not that many. I mean, I believe I do.
Is that what he gave? 5%? Well, yeah, 10 is tithing. Like that's to me giving 5. First of all, I don't know.
I guess give 2.5. He's $200 billion, right? But I'm assuming there's some like illiquid stuff he can't get rid of. Like if his liquid assets, what he can give. I guess he can give illiquid assets too if he had a good advisor. But anyway, we digress here. My point is, he is giving a lot of money away. Now, Branson and Musk have signed the giving pledge. They are pledged to give. But also, the giving pledge is symbolic. They don't have to give anything until they die. So that doesn't necessarily solve a lot of things we're talking about here in terms of problems today. The question is, should they be giving their money? This is what I think is fun. Should they be giving their money to charities to solve problems, or should they be exploring space?
I don't think we should treat these, given their wealth, like they're mutually exclusive. And I think that's partly what's happening here. I'm gonna answer your question with another question that I think we should think about as we have this conversation, which is, for the people who are really mad about this, like, what are they mad about? Like, are they mad that we're spending money on going to space at all? Like, if the government was spending this money, would they also be mad? Or are they just mad because they're billionaires and they're mad that billionaires exist and this is just symbolic of a system that they hate? And I think it's probably that second one, which I'm more sympathetic to. The first question, like, I absolutely think it's great that we spend money, even exorbitant amounts of money, well spent trying to get to space and expand our understanding of space. But we can use those questions as some frames as you give us your take, because you actually do know quite a lot about this. So I'm interested to get into your take on this.
Yeah. And I think this story kind of touched on everything, like capitalism's problems right now, plus our actual problems in society, whether they're part of capitalism or not, like broken government, and then like government's inability to solve anything, like private citizens handling what the government used to do. Plus it's billionaires. We love talking about billionaires in the media in the United States. Okay, so I want to be clear. I'm not defending, I am going to defend Jeff Bezos and the billionaires for this, but
you
it's
already
not
have.
Because I love these guys. I just want to give everybody some context as to why. I agree with you. This stuff isn't mutually exclusive. You can spend a bunch of money, go to space, and spend on charity. But here's the one thing a lot of people like kind of just forget. Giving that much money away is very, very hard. It is incredibly hard. Writing $1 million check to a charity that doesn't have it or let's call it $10 million, $100 million. You're going to that don't have the infrastructure to take that much cash is almost it's an impossible task in many ways. My own charity is going to be $1 million organization suit up, which we're really excited about. But if you gave us a $10 million check, like we are run in a certain way that we could scale, but $100 million would be like, we're not there yet. We have 8 staff, wherever it is. Like that's like you're just scaling up.
So what are some of the charities that can take huge sums of money to solve?
And that's the biggest problem is that the ones that can take that are your universities and your hospitals. And the main issues in private philanthropy today, like what are the problems with why philanthropy doesn't work? Number one is that a lot of these charities do not and cannot take massive risk. So you end up getting money funneled to a lot of safe bets, which is names on buildings or treating symptoms instead of the cure. there's a lot of talk in philanthropy on your overhead. And there's a guy named Dan Pilata has a TED Talk on uncharitable. And one of the things he talks about is like, we talk about overhead, which is like donors will say, I want my money to go to the cause and not some executive director's yacht, which is okay, fine. But the reality is, what does overhead include? That's not program money. That can include technology, research, talent, innovation, like recruiting people, reinvestment back in your business. You're telling me that Apple or Amazon don't spend more than 10% of their profits or their budget on overhead? It's ridiculous. So you never hamstring a business that way, but we do that to our charities. So you'd rather have a bigger pie that spends 25% on research and tech and quote unquote overhead than a smaller pie that's got the perfect 90-10 that a lot of clients want. That's a big one. And then a lot of them are, a lot of people want to start their own thing. So a lot of private philanthropists, there's like the world has too many charities. I think the number we used to tell our clients is that 95% of for-profit startups fail in their first 2 years because that's capitalism. That's how it works. But in charities, in nonprofit land, only 10% fail. It's less than that. So they just don't fail. They just exist on in perpetuity and suck resources from each other. So
this is all an argument as to what? That it's...
So my point is for people to be, and let's call it global citizen or the left saying, hey, Jeff Bezos should have said that $5.5 billion and used it to cure hunger. That's a very, very, that's not an excuse to not do it, but that's not like, it's not like he could just donate and be like, oh, I solved hunger. Like to actually solve a problem there, it would take a mass amount of innovation that I don't believe private philanthropy actually can solve. And that's the real question. If you actually ask yourself, what has philanthropy actually solved? And it's not a lot. Like think about them. We've put hundreds of millions of dollars into cancer research and solving hunger and disaster relief or climate change. And we don't have real solutions. Private philanthropy works in a couple areas. Vaccines, coronavirus is actually a good example, but malaria, smallpox, like crazy innovative research where private philanthropists can take crazy risk, prove concept, and then let the governments or big and nonprofit organizations who are allowed to take risk see it as a safer bet and then pour resources into it. But hunger, homelessness, cancer, like those are not places where private philanthropy has really done well.
So, and at the risk of making this redundant, why can't private philanthropy solve hunger? Like one of the posts I saw was saying how, I'm going to tell my kids this is why 1 in 3 children are hungry right now. Because you have Bezos, instead of paying income taxes, is, flying his penis rocket to space. Like, why is that wrong?
There's treating the symptom and there's treating the cure, like the cause of hunger, right? So you can feed people, and we do that, right? There's a lot of philanthropy that's spent like giving food to the hungry, and that is important. That's like I call that like disaster relief. There are people in need, we have to help them. And that's what philanthropy should be doing. It's also what our government should be doing. In order to actually solve hunger, we probably should get an answer on this. But the biggest challenge is not, at least in what I've researched, it's not a food quantity issue. It's a distribution issue. It's a government issue. It's every government's different.
Could a private individual with enough money solve that distribution issue?
If they were able to bribe every single government official to get them to do what they want, and maybe Jeff Bezos could create
Why don't you tell the World Bank story?
When I was on Wall Street, I asked a very senior woman from the World Bank, and she asked all of us, if you had infinity money, what would you use it to? What causes would you focus on to cure and solve? And everybody went around. They said the usual: education, this, that, and the other thing. And then I flipped it back on her. I was like, well, what would you do? And she said, I would use the money to bribe the men, and mainly men, but the people in power around the world to solve the most pressing problems in the world. And that's probably the only way you'd solve hunger, because Jeff Bezos is not the government of India, where he can, India has a caste system, right? Like they believe that they're very poor, done something to deserve that. And so
your point is that
he would be fighting against.
There are problems that are so big, and this is a Bill Gates thing that I've heard him say, so this makes some sense to me as I'm learning about this. Like there are some problems that are so huge, you actually need something at the scale of government to solve them.
Correct.
And yeah, Gates talks about that. Like there are things that you just can't solve privately.
Yes. So there's risks that governments and businesses, and that's the challenge. You need the government to solve them, and sometimes the private sector, but there's certain risks that those areas can't take. Like some ideas are too crazy. For a government, if you're an elected official, you can't be betting on crazy new technologies that are very expensive because people will find out if they don't work, you lose, right? You don't win your next election. Some of these really good ideas, like let's call it solving hunger on like a local level, takes what they call patient capital, where it's like I have to build the infrastructure and the community and the businesses need to grow and the hospital needs to get better. And it's like this slower, and you don't make your money back the way you would in a business, or you don't have the results the way you'd want like a government. So that's where private philanthropy should come in, where they come in like, I'll put up the crazy risk. I can fail as a private philanthropist because you can't. But if it works, then I want you to scale it. Jaclyn Novogratz, we've had Mike, it's the sister, I believe, of Mike Novogratz, who's been on this podcast, has started an organization called Acumen, and her whole thing is about patient capital, like building a hospital that's not going to have an ROI in the first 5, 10, 20 years. But over time, that government can pick up the tab because it's starting, because the community's building and the profit models start to work, and as a business or a government can start to come in. So a long way of saying, be like, Bezos should be solving world hunger and helping us. He is donating, I believe, like giving $10 billion. He's the number one philanthropist in the world, and so is his ex-wife. I don't see a future where he's not like pressured to give even more in that world. But also, what is he gonna do? Like, he's literally looking like, how do I give away $50 billion? If I wanted to give away $100 billion, how the hell do I do that? And what am I solving? You better do something awesome. Like, that's a really hard challenge. I'm not be like, boo-hoo, Jeff Bezos, wah. But seriously, it is very difficult. And if you listen to Bill and Melinda Gates talk about their foundation, they talk about how fucking impossible it is to give money away at an effective way that you would, the way you would invest it. Because these social problems are complicated. They are not black and white. They are not measured effectively. It's tough to measure and find results.
So there's a concept in philanthropy, I think it's philanthropy, or in the world, right? That's like, measure anything you're going to do with your money against just giving it to people. Yeah. Obviously, that's a big thing you and I are advocates for. Why shouldn't he just, figure out a way to do a massive UBI, or hell, just like use his personal wealth to pay Amazon employees more and just use that money to just give it to other people? That's
not a bad one. We're talking about 2.5% of it. So here's the other thing. And I wrote this down. So I don't think he's what we're talking about is not mutually exclusive. Like, him giving away 2.5% of his wealth for the space race does not mean he can't give hundreds of billions of dollars to do a UBI or something crazy. My concern, and if I was his advisor, like, find something that's sustainable and not, curing the symptom for a short period of time. But that's a different challenge. So the big one for me, and like why space is actually, in my opinion, relatively philanthropic and has high ROI, is a couple things. One, our government's not doing it. So if we are passionate as a human race about space exploration, billionaires have to step up. That's number one. And philanthropies aren't doing it, and governments are seeing it's too risky, like it's too expensive and too risky, whatever it is. The second thing is, it is massive upside here, both for profit and philanthropically. And I think that either we popularize space travel over time to the point where you could take a rocket from here to London and get there in, from New York to London and get there in 2 hours or so, and that would change a whole bunch of ways we do business, or you start to colonize space.
Yeah, but isn't there a good argument to be made that says, like, oh, yay, now, like, the already rich people, essentially, who do global business can get to London a little bit faster, but isn't it better if we, again, give poor people money instead of being able to do that? That, like, that advancement is not actually great.
It's a fair point, but it's like, I don't know, like, how valuable is it that we can have planes going, like, people can travel across the country.
So this I will say, okay. So
and that's not just a rich people thing. Poor people, like the average American, is flying on a plane once a year, I imagine.
No.
No?
I don't think so. Absolutely not. Poor Americans certainly are not. Once a year, poor Americans, we should look that up. But
it is not just business people traveling. There are plenty of people that
you
go
were
on
saying
vacation and use the
you were
plane.
going to London. Do you know how average Americans are not going on vacation?
London's a bad example, but you could take a rocket anywhere. When people go, and maybe made it cheaper for people to go to Australia or go see a relative who's across the world.
One of the coolest comparisons I heard was to maritime travel in the 1400s, which is, in 1450, if you were going to take a ship from Spain, for example, to some other part of the world, which at that point we didn't even know really what existed because we hadn't fully traversed the globe, it was incredibly risky. It would have seemed like a terrible use of money because the odds that you sunk or just disappeared and never came back, etc., were very, very high.
Right.
And yet, what that exploration got us was like insurance for the first time. Like, all sorts of things that in modern day we actually value that are good for any number of people. And of course, like, we now live in a global world in ways that are largely very beneficial. I mean, there's obviously, you can come at me for like colonialism, et cetera. And so one of the things that we know is being worked on as part of the space race is global broadband and being able to provide internet now from satellites to the entire world, including people in like third world countries who right now don't have any access or very little access to the internet, and what that has the potential to do in terms of making a truly global marketplace, in terms of people suddenly earning money. That did shift my perspective a little bit of what's being underestimated on the part of people who are really opposed to this is how much innovation can come out of, really important, valuable innovation can come out of investing in space. And what the point you're making, which I think is interesting, is that it should be private philanthropists doing this because the government should not be taking on this kind of risk, blowing this kind of money, but that we should be doing it. And so the people who should be doing it are exactly this. And
if the government, and if Elon and Branson and Jeff Bezos create recyclable rockets that cut the cost down going to space by 25 or 50 or 75%, and next thing you know, we can travel to Saturn, we're putting men on Mars. Eventually, if we have to back up the hard drive because of an extinction level event on Earth and we have to colonize Mars or the moon or God forbid any stuff, we'll be thanking them. And for 2.5% of his net worth or whatever the heck, like for a drop in the bucket for Jeff, this has high upside that no one else is really willing or able to take. So that is my defense of this. The big one to me, for those of you who are like, well, billionaires shouldn't exist this way, that sort of thing. To me, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, what Jeff Bezos is doing theoretically has massive upside for humanity. I don't think we should be mad at him. Objectively, I'm not a human being. You can be mad at me.
Okay, here's a question for you though. So Anand Giridharadas, how do I pronounce his last name? Giridharadas, who wrote Winner Take All or whatever, which was a book that Yang loves. I know you love about basically how you get these people who.
I don't know how to pronounce the last name. Sorry, Anand.
Yeah, you get super rich and then they give their money away a little bit and pat themselves on the back and feel like they've made a difference when really they haven't. So he wrote a book that makes that argument. He has said about this, and I'll shout out Griff Shark, I think was his name, username on our YouTube comments last time brought this to my attention, which I appreciate, which was Anand's argument that basically like America and what's great about America was built on this balance between what we do as a collective, what we do together, and then what we do alone. And that this whole billionaire space race is an example of this balance being totally out of whack. I'm curious on your thoughts on that. One thing that comes to mind for me is in this maritime analogy I was making, a lot of those those ship explorations that happened in the 1400s were a combination of private investors and government investment, which helps ensure that there's a sort of collective benefit to be had from it. I don't know, any thoughts on that take?
So, I guess from my experience in talking to the big philanthropists, the issue is not what's getting done in some ways. I think there's times where government will have to make an investment no one wants to make, and you like that, but other times philanthropists can do it too. So it's less about that. The big one to me, the biggest challenge of where philanthropy is going is oversight. And Bezos is not the best example because that is, or at least like Musk, like SpaceX, a public company. Like I don't think Blue Origin's public, but it's like there'll be some level of oversight there, I guess, and plus it's very public. But like they're making a big deal about it. But so there are a lot of philanthropists who wanted more flexibility than starting a private foundation or starting a nonprofit. So private foundation, you have to give away. You basically give all the money at one point, you get your tax deduction there, and then you have to give away, I believe it's like 5% a year or so. There's like required distribution, maybe it's 10%, depends on, it's been a while since I've been doing it, but I believe it's 5%. You have to give away a certain amount a year, but you don't. The rest can just be invested. But that has rules and regulations, and the IRS and are actually closely monitoring private foundations. Those get audited a lot. What Mark Zuckerberg, for example, did with his wife, they didn't even do it for the tax purposes. They started an LLC, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, I think it's called. Their philanthropic efforts are all done in a for-profit vehicle. Just do what they want, which in one hand is really cool because they can take crazy risk and do what they want. They don't have to give 5% a year. They don't have to worry about doing things that are purely altruistic, whatever it is. But there's no public accountability because a nonprofit is technically owned by the public. So there's no awareness of who's on the board. There's no direct oversight what every dollar is spent on. So things like that. So that to me is the biggest challenge. We're supposed to do this stuff together, or some of these things affect all of us, but there's no government oversight on how it happens. That's the biggest challenge.
Okay, well, I think this is interesting. I want to wrap us to our final topic here, bring us to our final topic here.
Don't hate the player, hate the game. Carly.
Appreciate your take on this. You know,
maybe people hate me. That's just what we need. Another.
No, I actually think you
white
bring
guy defending billionaires.
No, you bring a certain amount of knowledge to this that I think most people don't actually have. They don't understand how it works, and that's been a criticism I've heard of the people who are criticizing the billionaires, is that a lot of these folks are like commentators and haven't actually tried to like solve these problems in a big way and don't realize how hard it actually is, and that this space work is actually really valuable. And then I think
critics, man, it's critics.
But there's valid point. I mean, like Richard Branson tried to get a bunch of money from the UK government to bail out Virgin Atlantic in ways that or Virgin Galactic or whatever or I think it was Virgin Atlantic, whatever. It just that riles me up because I'm like, let capitalism do its thing. Let these companies fail. Also, you have $5.2 billion. Feel free to bail it out yourself. If you're so upset, now you want government money, that does really get me.
Oh, the fact that they don't pay income taxes. I got plenty of bones to pick.
Yeah, and that's now that's the system, not necessarily the billionaires specifically, but it's messed up. Okay. Speaking of money.
Predict the future, Carly.
Last topic.
Do it.
Well, no, I was going to say our final topic, I think, was going to be stoner cats, which is just something we wanted to bring to people's attention. Okay, so
stoner cats.
Like gift goats, which I talked about a while back. These NFTs always have silly names that somehow involve animals. Stoner Cats is an NFT project being launched really by Mila Kunis, I guess, but also with Ashton Kutcher. Fascinatingly, Vitalik Buterin is involved in this. Vitalik is the founder of Ethereum, so that was cool that they got him. And it is an NFT project that was supposed to drop.
Chris Rock.
Well, okay, we'll get there. So they're not actually really behind the project, though. They're just actors.
They're still involved.
Okay, so let me give it to you. So this NFT project was supposed to drop yesterday. As we're recording this, it's Tuesday, July 27th. When we record this. It was supposed to drop yesterday, Monday, at 2 p.m. Pacific time. They had to push the launch back to today. I'm going to give quick pros and cons.
So we'll have launched already, by the way. So
by the time this airs, unless they push it back. Okay, I'm going to give you the quick pros and cons and the rundown. The pros of this project is it's really cool and innovative. Basically, if you buy one of these NFTs, and they're going for 0.35 ETH, which is $800 or whatever current prices of ETH, if you buy one of these, it unlocks 45 minutes of content created by some bigwigs in Hollywood. So you have the people who animated Spider-Man, who have a bunch of different animators, people who created some cool TV shows, and then this content is voiced by the actors are Mila Kunis, Ashton Kutcher, Seth MacFarlane, Jane Fonda, who's the one I missed? Chris Rock. And then Vitalik Buterin, who's the founder of Ethereum. And so it's an all-star cast. It seems to be an all-star team creating this animated series called Stoner Cats. And then there are all sorts of other perks about cats who get high.
What could go wrong? Is cats getting high?
And there's all sorts of other benefits if you become a token holder of this NFT. You get additional perks and say in the content. And the idea here is that this will hopefully fund other projects. So it's the first example at least that I know of NFTs basically funding like a production company and putting the power in the hands of the viewers as opposed to in the hands of a traditional studio. Those are the pros. I think conceptually super cool. I'm investing in it because I love that concept. I want to see more of this. And hey, like call out to the socialism thing. This is what you're talking about. Like this is the worker collective. It's like the money's going to the people.
Then I don't want to invest anymore. But
oh my goodness, calm down. Okay, so and then the cons.
What are the cons?
This team has not done a fantastic job of building their community around this project. And right now in NFT world, it is very important to build a strong community for your NFT before it launches. And I think there's been two failings on this front. You have all of these celebrity mainstream players who are involved in this project, and they are doing very little to promote it or to educate their audiences on how to set up a MetaMask wallet, for example, and therefore to buy an NFT using ETH. Like, they have not done the requisite education piece to draw in the mainstream audience. And they're also not letting you buy this with a credit card. So like NBA Top Shot is an NFT project that's done very well with the mainstream because you can use a credit card for it. So they don't have the infrastructure for the mainstream, and then they have not, educated the mainstream on how to buy ETH, which is a missed opportunity on a whole bunch of fronts. Seth MacFarlane isn't even tweeting about this, nor is Chris Rock, etc. So that means the people they're attracting are the crypto NFT insiders who don't really give an F that these people are celebrities and just want a cool project. And on this front, they've sort of delivered because the project seems cool, but they haven't really paid their respects to the inner community to make them feel comfortable and like they really know what they're doing. So they had to delay the launch yesterday because they messed up some of the tech. And instead of doing what some of these other projects have done when they have to delay their launch, because that's actually pretty common, and say, hey, okay, sorry, we're gonna have to delay, we'll give you 24 hours notice before this thing drops. They sort of kept everybody on edge. They didn't give us a sense of when the new ETA was. So people were getting really mad. They're like, this is disrespectful to the community. You're making us sit here and wait and waste our day. Instead of handling it the way you're supposed to. So the cons seem to be they don't yet seem to be really good at navigating the whole NFT crypto community. The pros are that I think it's innovative and super cool, and for that reason I'm going to put some ETH towards it. But everyone should check it out. Stoner Cats TV. See what you think.
We're investing. If we lose our shirt, I don't know. And this is I can't.
We're not investing enough to lose our shirt. Don't invest so much that you're going to lose your.
True. I can't tell if we're just bitter that we missed on the gift goat. And Stoner Cat is our consolation prize, or I'm kind of betting on the show being good because that I think will bring in a broader community. But the fact that these celebs have not tweeted about it makes me worry that it's not very good.
I don't think that's it. I think they just don't want to have to educate. They don't want to have to start answering questions about how do I get access to this show. I mean, look, clearly spending $800 for 45 minutes of content is an absurd value proposition.
That's ridiculous.
Of course.
Well, you get other episodes, right? Or is it one token per episode?
No. Each episode is 5 or 6 minutes. The episodes are really short. They have a total of 45 minutes of content for this first drop. But then the idea is that they're going to expand it to more content, and as a token holder, you have say in what gets developed, and you get other perks.
So there's a chance Carly's making me lose money again.
Again, Zach, we don't have to rehash this. I did not make you lose money the first time around.
Stoner Cats. It's stonercats.com. You can just
I don't
Google
think, is that what it is?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's in Ashton Kutcher's Instagram profile too.
Ashton and Mila.
Link in bio.
And by the way, Mila's sort of pro the Billionaire space race. And watching an interview with her about Stoner Cats, she was like, I think people are misunderstanding the value of this whole space race thing. And she's like, I get the criticism, but I think it's people don't really understand.
She talked about space race and Stoner Cats. She beat us to the punch here. I thought this was the only podcast.
Well, Ashton was an investor in Virgin Galactic, and Mila told him he couldn't go to space. She was like, absolutely not. You're not going to space.
I'm going to space, Carl. I'm doing it.
Yeah, no, I would not be comfortable with that. I would take the total Mila approach and was like, absolutely not, Zach.
This is what's going to happen. Stoner Cats going to the moon, and it's going to pay for my Virgin Galactic $250,000
going to the moon
space tourist ride, and I'm going to be weightless. And it's gonna be
there's
amazing.
A pun. Stoner Cats is going to go to the moon to fund your trip to the moon.
I thought you were going the cow jumped over the moon type poem thing. We are now burning the end of this podcast. Carl, Stoner Cats, and Billionaire Space Race, an episode for, what do we call this? For the record books. Great to have you. Thank you for keeping me.
I'm a co-host now, Zach. Great to have you, Zach. It's great to have you.
I'm glad to be in your presence. We're out. Have a good week, everybody. See you next Thursday.
Bye, everyone.